I made a really stupid purchase once. Worst purchase I ever made in my life.
This podcast has bad words.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, TK Coleman.
Let's create a great day.
From Alabama's here.
Hi, everybody.
We've got the rest of our team in the studio. And coming up today on this free public minimal episode, we are joined by Ray Flemings. He's the founder of a company called Myria. He's also known as the concierge for the 1%. We originally connected with him because he had this idea of being post-luxury. We're going to be talking about that a bit today. We're also talking to a caller about why she craves the perfect purchase, even though she feels like her life is complete. And another listener has a question about everyone's obsession with opulence and square footage in their homes. Then we've got a lightning round segment for you and a listener tip as well. You can check out the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 419, where we answer 5 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free because, say it with me, y'all, advertisements suck. Yuck. Let's start with our callers. If you got a question or comment for our show, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice recording right from your phone to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Diana.
Hi, my name is Diana, and I am a Patreon subscriber from Orinda, California. I am a new mom of a 7-month-old. I went through some postpartum difficulties that were so severe that I believe they pushed me into a new phase of my life of accelerated growth. This is the time when I found your podcast, and it resonated so much with me that I decluttered my whole house and vowed never to buy things I don't need. I felt truly happy and satisfied after the declutter was complete. However, now that the house is, quote, done, I have found myself nitpicking at the items I did keep and deciding to replace them with a, quote, better version. I will go on my phone and research and shop for hours to find the perfect replacement, never being satisfied with the items I end up ordering. The items are very unimportant. Things like different type or color of bibs, diaper wet bags, my daughter's clothes that she will grow out of in a couple months anyway. This seems obsessive and has started adding back significant stress to my life. How do I stop searching for the perfect thing and find happiness in what I already have? Thanks so much.
Ray, I thought this was the perfect question to start with. And here's how I want to introduce you. I read your Vice article. We'll put a link to this in the show notes as well. And I just want to read a quick excerpt from this. It's a long article. I'd encourage folks to check it out so they can get to know you a little bit better. But here's what it says. It's called The Man Who Knows What the World's Richest People Want and How to Get It. And by the way, I think you could take out richest, and I think it's still applicable to you. It's about knowing what people want. Here's what the article says, and I'd love to hear your response to Diana. Ray Flemings likes to say that he is 2 degrees of separation from any significant gatekeeper in the world. One of the few reasons he is good at getting the richest people in the world whatever their hearts desire. If there is one person in the world who has figured out how the upper crust of society works, its unwritten rules, language, and particulars, it might just be Flemings. Over the last decade, he has become one of the premier fixers for the global elite, a Jeeves-like magician who professes to be able to make the wildest dreams of some of the richest people in the world come true. He can get clients into locker rooms, secure them private hospital wings during a pandemic, and get them into the most exclusive places in the world, like the Met Gala, highly anticipated Saturday Night Live performances, or on the field during the Super Bowl. More than that, though, Fleming's gives the fantastically rich a private place to admit what they can't say publicly, that their extravagant life is not as fulfilling as they had hoped it would be, and that they need help figuring out how to fix it. Now, Diana is in a similar spot. She may not be part of the 1% or the 0.003% or whatever it might be, but she's reached this point where she said, my home is done, but I'm still looking for the perfect purchase.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. Diana and my billionaire clients are all people. And we'll spend a lot of time today talking about the human condition. And it expresses itself in different ways. This idea that we need more, this idea that we've got to buy, this idea that we have something to chase, right, is something that we're born into. It's part of the American dream. This summer, I rented a house in Beechwood Canyon. I'd never spent any time there, but this is the old historic neighborhood underneath the Hollywood sign, right? And it gave me a long time to kind of reflect on the formation of the American dream, right? Because we invented and popularized mass media. You know, the ideas that were held in America really swept the world, right? And as you go through LA, you'll meet tons of people who moved here. And they moved to LA because they got swept up in the American dream. But what was that dream? That dream, the Horatio Alger vision, that I can pull myself up by my bootstraps, that I can go out and make this success. It got intertwined with this idea that, well, what is success? Well, success is more, right? And if you look at the Forbes billionaire list today, the guy worth $1 billion is sad that he's not worth $2 billion. And the guy worth $2 billion is sad that they're not worth $5 billion. And the 5's mad they're not worth $10 billion, because success is defined as how much you have. And there is no end to that. There is no fulfillment to that. In my career, I've been able to work now with hundreds of very successful people. I mean, combined net worth well north of $500 billion. And I continue to hear the same challenges and needs and complaints across the board that sound a lot like the caller who just called in. We coined a name for it internally. We call it the success condition. And it goes something like, you're chasing the dream, building a company, work, toil. The wealth event happens. Look, Ma, I made it, right? Like, oh man, I've done it. I've sold my company. I've won the lottery, whatever the wealth event is. I went pro, whatever that is in this person's world, I made it. Only to discover that money does not buy happiness. That rich people get sad, depressed, lonely, commit suicide, just like poor people. That all the money in the world, you still only get 24 hours in the day. And if you spend your 24 hours focused on the business, the wealth, the chase, then that comes at the expense, because you only get 24 hours, and necessarily that comes at the expense of other things and other people that you care about. So, there's no wonder that, these people have these wealth events, and then there's the divorce, then there's the health concerns, kind of all of these things that happen almost like a stereotype, right? It's almost, you could almost predict it, right? It's just like, oh, you're going to get there, and then there's all of these other problems. And it's because all of their hours were kind of spent in these other areas. And then they also discover that they're lonely, that, wealth can be isolating because of how we've structured it, when the name of the game is just how much I have, not how well are we doing as a society, when the only thing that matters is me, my money, my wealth, when that's the only thing, that's very, very isolating. It becomes harder to form new friends outside of your existing circle. And we're socially wired as human beings. We need each other. It is not a surprise that the highest form of torture in a prison, right? Like you do something wrong, you murder someone, you go to jail, but you do something really wrong in jail and they send you to solitary, right? And so great wealth is isolating, right? Which again, humans aren't wired to like. And so, it creates kind of all of these problems. And so I love your thinking around the subject of pre-luxury.
Yeah.
And how do we start happy? How do we end happy? And I think it relates to part of our mission at Myria, which is how do we form a new set of goals? How do we change the idea of the age, the zeitgeist around what success looks like? Because as long as success is solely the number of dollars in your bank account, a lot of people are going to be very, very unhappy.
You know, I love your emphasis on the fact that more fundamental than being rich or poor or middle class is our being human. That's what unites us, and happiness, or the quest for meaning. It's as much of a response to the abundance of the world as it is a response to the scarcity of the world. One of my colleagues, Professor Ant Davies, he defines economics not as like the study of money, but as the study of what happens when our unlimited capacity for desire comes into contact with our limited capacity to create and our limited resources. And there's that tension in every life. Like no matter what you have or don't have, there's just no end to your capacity to want something other than what your life actually is. But there is an end to how long you can stay awake, how hard you can work, how many people you know, and what you can accomplish on your own. So I love that you humanize this discussion and say, hey, let's come together and figure out how we cope with the problems of life, because we're not as far apart as we think we are just because of those economic differences.
Absolutely.
Right. Let me talk to you about, getting back to Diana's question specifically. I'm actually reminded from what you're talking about here of people who climb Mount Everest, and then they have a type of postpartum depression in a way, because they literally did the hardest thing they're ever going to have to do in their lives. In fact, it even kills some of these people, right? But it's that pursuit that makes them feel the most alive. But then they get to the top of the mountain and they realize they have to come down. There's nowhere else to climb at this point. And often think about trust fund kids as well. They're born on the top of the mountain. They're at Mount Comfort. And they didn't have to do any of the work to get there. It just got them there. So it's hard for them to even appreciate the fact that they've made it to the top of the mountain. But even for someone like Diana, she's made it to the top of her mountain. I have a healthy kid that I love. My house feels like it's complete. And yet I need better things now. And the thing I had to realize early on is acquiring better things isn't going to make me a better person. Not going to make my life better even necessarily. It may make it more comfortable, but comfort, we often confuse as though I'm improving my life. I like to say that improving your life won't actually improve your life. And your billionaire clients, they figure that out the hard way. They've improved their life in every measurable way, and it feels so empty. I made it to the top of the mountain, but where do I go from here?
Right. Well, there is this idea of, I want to get to this destination, right? That happiness is a land. And when I arrive in happiness with a bunch of money in my bank account, I'm going to be happy. But you're not, because you're a human. And, you see the equation E equals MC squared everywhere. We don't really know what that means, right? We don't think it's Einstein, some smart people, some physics stuff. E equals MC squared. Right? It's the energy mass equivalency. And it basically says that everything that is energy has mass, and everything that has mass is energy. You, me, all of us are energy. And what does energy do? It's a wave. It's oscillating. It's going up and down at all times, right? We don't see ourselves that way. I see myself as Ray Fleming. You see, I'm a person. No. I am emitting heat at 98.6 degrees right now, right? If we turn the lights off and you had a night vision goggle, you could see the energy, the light that I am emitting, right? All humans are. And we're up and down and up and down. Our minds are made of energy. Our thoughts are made of energy. We are going to oscillate. So we think we're up and we don't want to go down. You don't have any choice but to go down. Your mood, everything is going to go back down. It's baked into the human experience. You're not going to be able to avoid it, right? And so you've got to zoom out and enjoy the ride and enjoy the journey, as opposed to destination seeking, like, there's some final place where I'm going to get there and I'm going to stop. I'll add one more funny point about this. In 1906, a physicist won the Nobel Prize for proving that an electron is a particle. It's a dot. Okay, Electron, the energy, it's a point, it's a fixed place, it's a particle, it's a thing, you can quantify it, etc. Some years later, his son won the Nobel Prize proving that an electron is also a wave. And today you have this particle wave duality. You hear that it's all about the perception. It's all about how you're looking at the electron, whether or not you think of it as a dot or a wave, but it's both. And your life is always oscillating. Diana's life is always oscillating. Sure, she's going to have that beautiful baby. Sure, the billionaire is going to sell that big company. And then it's going to change again. It's going to shift. That's the human experience. It's not going to change, right? And we will talk ourselves blue in the face trying to get to that. Oh, I just stayed at the top and everything's fine. It's not how it works.
It almost feels to me like we need a higher or different peak in the sense that we almost need this infinitely regressing peak that we're advancing toward, because all of the joy, all of the real success, the equanimity, not the metric-based success, but the equanimity or tranquility we feel in our own life has to do with progressing towards something. But as soon as we get there, well, then what? Maybe I'll be happy if I give myself permission to be happy. But I can give myself permission to be happy right now. We don't ever give babies a permission to be happy. Diana doesn't go to her 7-month-old kid and be like, hey, today you have permission to be happy. Or she can make the kid discontented by removing food or the necessities. TK, you and I were talking about this the other day. We were sort of ruminating about this episode. And you were reading a quote to me about how all of our primate ancestors, whenever they are active, achieving in a way, how we would look at it as achieving, but they wouldn't look at it as achieving. For them, the real luxury is the sort of downtime, because activity is generally fear-based for them. It's to meet a basic animalistic need.
That's right. And in that quote, he refers to the human species as the alienated ape, the one that is not worthy of its ancestors, for we have not conquered that fear. We use incessant activity as a way to chase away what we think is going to happen to us in that moment of boredom, in that moment of not doing. But it's a very strange thing, because one of the quandaries of being human is there are a lot of things we get philosophically, and then when we try to implement it pragmatically, we find this contradiction, right? I know what I ought to be doing, or I know what I want to do. I think I want to do it, but then I find myself doing the opposite of what I wish to do. And sometimes, I think about Erwin Raphael McManus, who was just here, and he talked about overcoming addiction and attachment. And he says, you've got to get busy doing something that is more compelling than the thing you're addicted to. And sometimes we can get so caught up in looking at compulsive behavior, saying, I know that it's bad for me. I know that it's unhealthy, but I just can't stop. But we haven't taken the time to craft a compelling vision of something that is worth giving that up for. And one thing I would say, Diana, just to get practical for a second, would be I would step back from trying to quit being on the internet for hours searching for the perfect purchase. And I would ask myself, if I had the power to say no to this compulsive behavior, what would I do with that time and energy instead? Because the question is not, how can I have less or how can I do less, but how might my life be more with less? So what is that more that you get in a meaningful way that makes it worth giving up that compulsion? Because until you can see that and sense that as something that is stealing away time that you could be investing in the life that really matters to you, you'll never be able to overcome that.
Ray, I think part of that more is an acceptance or an appreciation. We all know intrinsically we can appreciate things without having to consume them. Maybe some of your billionaire clients actually don't realize this. They go to the LACMA and they see the Van Gogh painting. They're like, I think I will consume that. I will own it, right? And many of them may ask for something like that, or I need to have the equivalent of that in my home. But most of us can go there and we can appreciate the art, or we can appreciate a beautiful building. We can appreciate a sunset without needing to take it home with us. However, consumer culture has taught us, but you can also take the thing home with you. So how do you reconcile that? Because I'm sure some of your billionaire clients have found that some of that equanimity, and maybe you've helped them find that equanimity that we're trying to help Diana find herself.
Yeah, I mean, I think people, they come to us as clients in different places in their life, right? We're all kind of moving. I was talking about oscillating, right?
Yeah.
We're on a spectrum, pendulum kind of swinging back and forth. People are realizing, I think, more and more across the spectrum that kind of blind consumerism is silly. The idea of being a minimalist is, of course, I think almost antithetical to capitalism as practiced in America, right? It's almost the opposite, right? I think that's fascinating. Anytime you say, well, is there a system beyond capitalism? Everyone's always like, communism. But I think it's funny that you actually are presenting another path, right? Because there are many benefits to capitalism.
Right.
Right? I think in some degree, we have seen very positive things, but as currently implemented in America, it's not. And so when we go back to Diana, we go back to our clients, I think you see people kind of waking up to this idea that I don't actually need all of this stuff kind of at all times.
Right.
And, but it's hard, right? Because society is telling us that we do. Right. All of the messages. I used this phrase earlier called socially wired. There's a book by a gentleman, Dr. Nicholas Christakis. I think he's one of the great minds in the world. The name of the book is Connected. And it basically talks about, we know we can catch COVID, but did you know you can catch obesity? Did you know you can catch depression? Did you know you can catch suicide? That your friends' influence you even if you've never met them. If your friend's friend gains 10 pounds, it increases your likelihood of gaining 10 pounds, even if you never met them. Because all of the people around you, right, are influencing you. And he lays out the science for it. Nicholas Christakis is one of the foremost researchers in the world. He's a Sterling professor at Yale, Harvard, MD, PhD, Master's Public Health, 2 or 3 time New York Times bestselling author, like a brilliant, brilliant man. But the book is written for humans. The book is written for like normal people to understand. And part of the compulsion, part of the, I need to go buy that, part of, I need to hop on the internet and do what she's doing is socially driven, right? And we're taking on this and that's kind of why we focus on the zeitgeist. Like the big idea, what does it look like? I'll talk about me for a moment, right? I think the best advice, I made a really stupid purchase once. Worst purchase I ever made in my life. I was moving to LA and I needed an LA car, right? For my business, I need an LA car.
Yes.
So what's an LA car for me, right? I'm in this, it has to be nice, but it can't be too showy, all of these balances and considerations. And so I settle on this brand new convertible Aston Martin DB11. Right? Now, why did I get this stupid ass car?
I love that's a settle.
Why did I get this? Well, so the truth was I got this car because some person I never met in the 1950s decided James Bond would drive an Aston Martin. And James Bond was cool. Yeah. Literally. Okay.
Yeah.
As this summer approached, I was in the final year of that lease. I'm coming up to my 50th birthday. I turned 50 July 27th. And I'm literally so close to the studio at that time. I was in the hills in Hollywood. I had, bedroom I hadn't visited. That stupid car had been sitting in the garage. I hadn't driven it. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing with all this bullshit? I made the decision. I gave the car to my friend. Just like, here you go. I don't even need to see this car again. Just return it when the lease is over. Like, it's yours. Done. And put all my things on sale and went on vacation. Just like as I was gone, I was like, team, just sell all this shit.
Wow.
I'm literally just going to, literally did it all this summer. And, but reaching that point where you're like, it's time to let this stuff go, that it's trapping me. I'm in the thing that I'm trying to get out of. It affects us all. And so I was just sharing, I guess, back to Diana, that we are all there. We have all done it, and,
Yes.
And it is a societal thing, right? It's like this drum beat in the background, kind of like that noise we're hearing downstairs. It's there, ever present, and it's affecting us. So
that's why I love this idea of pre-luxury. It's possible to let go of the things in advance by not acquiring it in the first place. The most sustainable purchase is the one that's left on the shelf, but also The most clutter-free purchase is the one that's left on the shelf. Not bringing the thing home also saves you the cost of cleaning the thing and changing the batteries in the thing and repairing the thing and worrying about the thing and storing the thing and then replacing the thing when it gets dinged or stolen. And now all of a sudden, that pre-luxury is like, I know that I'm okay if I go without. And I think that's the biggest problem that you just illuminated with materialism. I don't think we actually live in a materialist society the way that we think about it. We live in an insecure society. And I really want your love and acceptance, and I mistake love for someone liking my material possessions. And the material possessions become a shortcut. Hey, look, this is the type of person I am. This is the car I drive, this house I live in. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with owning a nice car. The problem we run into is we think that is going to make people like us, the essence of me, more. And it might get you somewhere in certain circles of people. It might impress certain people, but it's not going to get you what you're actually looking for, which is that acceptance. And Diana, it's the same thing. Buying the right things, the perfect purchase for your home, you can buy all of the right things and someone comes over and they're really impressed. That doesn't mean they like you for who you are. It means they like some of the stuff in your house. And that's okay. But the things don't make you who you are, and they certainly don't get you greater acceptance from the people that you hope you get acceptance from.
Right. Hey, I'm intrigued really quickly with the connected idea and how a lot of this compulsive behavior is socially driven. One of the challenges with getting into rooms where the people have the skill set, the mindset to raise us up in the way we want to be raised up is that we feel like we lack the qualifications to be embraced by that crowd. So yeah, I want to be the least smartest guy in the room because that's going to make me more intelligent, but those people might not let me in the room because I'm not smart enough to converse at their level. I want to be the least wealthiest guy in the room, but why would they let me in when all I have is to take and nothing to contribute? So how do you put yourself in those social spaces where your behavior can be influenced at those levels you're talking about when you don't necessarily have the sense of how to access them?
You know, I think it's really funny, right? So we do a lot of social stuff, right? We throw private events and all sorts of things. And so you would think, like reflexively, that, oh, well, rich people want to be in a room with other very, very rich people. But that's actually not true, right? Like if I had 50 billionaires in LA this weekend and they were like, what are we going to do? And I was like, well, we're going to put all of you in a really nice house together alone. 50 billionaires hanging out. All of them would be like, yuck. That sounds like the worst idea in the world, right? And so like when we do events that are often family friendly, right? Where like literally people are at a party. We did one at this really crazy house in Holmby Hills, and we had like camp counselors in the home because the house had a 1,500 square foot dollhouse, basically, like a 2-story, like you could, it was like the craziest playland ever. And so we've got these really cool camp counselors in there. So parents literally walked into the party with their babies, right? And like dropped them off with the camp counselor and then went and got some food and then like hanging and talking. And then the kids running through the party with the freaking croissant, like, hey, right? And it was fun, but it was not just billionaires. And there was intentionally a cross section. I mean, look, I was born with as little as one can be in a first world country, right? I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, North Memphis, grew up in Whitehaven. I mean, this was during a strange time. So, I would never be in the room. I'm one of those people who would never be in the room if the room wasn't open to other people. And I think that people who are really rich want to know people who are really amazing. And being wealthy economically doesn't mean you don't want to know people who are changing the world in other ways, because you do. And so awesome people, I think, are far more welcome than they are in places, even if they don't know it. So like, I think you guys, and others who are doing amazing things are welcome anywhere. But, in your own mind, you'd be like, oh, they'd never want me there. But that's not the truth.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the opposite. I would never want to go to some of these places where it's extreme opulence. And in fact, that leads into this next question here. Chris has a question about opulence.
Hey guys, this is Chris, a Patreon subscriber from London. My question for you is, why do we obsess over the square footage of our homes? When I walk around my local neighbourhood, it seems that everyone is spending their evening in the same way, and that's in front of the TV. So why do we need a mansion to do that? Thanks, guys. Much appreciated. Love the show.
Leave it to the Brits to lay it plain. I love that question.
It's this question really about opulence in a way, because I think we get confused and we think that opulence corresponds with our well-being. And so the more opulent I am, the more well-off I must be, and therefore well-off means well-being. And we all know that that is not true. I have a really close friend. She's an interior designer, and she works with a lot of the people that you probably work with, but just in their homes, right? And these people are buying $100,000 couches or more. And, in North Memphis, that'll buy you a block, right? But their couch is worth more than several houses in North Memphis. And yet, what happens? We get more square footage. Oh, that's not right. But it says I'm successful. You ever see the movie Boiler Room?
Mm-hmm.
And there's this interesting scene where all the guys come together, and it's exactly what Chris is talking about here. They're gathered in this little living room in this giant mansion. And he's like, hey, did you just move in? There's no stuff here. And he's like, oh, what are you talking about? No, I've been here for like a year. Well, why is that? You bought the house as a way to signal. It wasn't about the square footage. There's nothing wrong with square footage. The question is, what's the appropriate amount of space in your home? I don't live in a tiny house because that doesn't work for me and my family. I think they're really admirable. I like the tiny home movement. However, if you forced me into a tiny home, that'd be like similar to forcing me into a mansion. It's not the appropriate amount of square footage. But I'm sure you work with people all the time, and they have the most opulent houses, and it didn't get them what they thought it would get them.
I think it's funny. There's two sides to this. I think, one, as our economic system is currently implemented, we want the richest people in the world spending money and having more fun and buying homes. It employs people. It's actually, when you understand how money works, those dollars get taxed, so forth and so on. So you want that to happen as long as the system works the way that it does. But the point that you're making about wealth is such a funny one, right? And because I see it at like the most extreme end, right? Like, $400 million single family homes.
The ones I drive by in like Bel Air, and you're like, who lives in that apartment complex?
Like a stadium, right? This was the price of a stadium a few years ago, right? Before we kind of got to $1 billion stadiums, like, $500 million. No, it's a single family home. We have operated, because we operate estates. I've operated a home here in California, which had a full-time staff with security of nearly 70 people operating a single-family home for 5 people.
Unbelievable.
Right? And so, you've got the person in the 5,000 square foot home wanting to go to 10. And it's really, really funny. Like, once you get to that, these really, really crazy executions, they're awesome. They are, gorgeous, amazing, et cetera, but it's a lot.
Well, it's a lot.
And everyone that I know in them is kind of like, they're downsizing. I mean, because you can't upsize it. Where else are you going to go, right?
Well, right. You're going to upsize your quality of life by downsizing the material possessions, including the home. I think we continue to desire the upsizing because we haven't figured out what enough is. And so we think that as soon as I do upgrade from the 5,000 square foot home to the 10,000, that will be enough. And it's true, you probably already had more than enough square footage. What you didn't have enough of is your own freedom. Before we started rolling, we were talking about power versus influence and power versus freedom. And quite often, when we get more power, we become more, quote unquote, successful, we often lose much of the freedom. And we think that now by buying more square footage, maybe that will give me more freedom. But quite often it does the opposite.
Yeah, that's right. And I see two elements to this question here where he says, all right, we have these mansions and then we just spend our evenings all watching TV.
Yep.
And I think both of those elements are up for reconsideration. On one end, we have a question that says, why do we choose to live in these places that don't rise to the occasion of how we actually live? But then the other component is, why do we choose to live in ways that don't rise to the occasion of the potential of the spaces that we inhabit? And so this isn't just a question about the size of our homes and the amount of money that we spend on luxury goods, but it's also a question about the way that we live, which is a question for all of us. And I think some questions are best addressed by trying to answer them, but others are best addressed by letting them stand and letting them do their work. It's like when you have a friend that calls you out on your BS with a question mark at the end, and you say, point taken, and your friend says, it wasn't a point, it was a question. But why do we say point taken? Because we mean, I'm going to let that question do its work on me. You know, I'm not going to drive that away with an answer. And so, Chris, I think that question, we should let it do its work. It's a good one. And let's keep both elements in there. Are we living in a way that reflects the spaces we inhabit?
You know, there's this interesting thing you made me think about called positional concern studies. Have you ever caught wind of this? So I believe the late 1990s, 98 perhaps, Dr. I'm going to butcher their names. Two professors did a study, and the study went something like this. They asked the research subjects a simple question. The question they proposed was, you're looking for work, and you have two job offers, okay? Job offer A is going to pay you $100,000 per year, but your coworkers will make $200,000 a year. Job offer B is going to pay you $50,000 a year in a company where your coworkers make $25,000 per year. The professors found that fully 50% of Americans choose job B.
Really?
All else being equal.
All right, that was the question. Would you rather make $100K a year where your coworkers made $200,000 or $50K a year where your coworkers made $25,000?
Wow.
Fully 50% of this country chooses option B. Now, the implications, first of all, this study was very, very famous. It has been confirmed and reconfirmed in the last 3 decades since. It is a thing. It's actually at the heart of a lot of what's wrong in America. Because these people don't want to do better themselves. They actively want someone else to be doing worse than them. Fully half of the country holds that idea. As a manager, because I've run many businesses in my life, and it comes up even dealing with employees, where it's not about them making more money. It's about, well, that person makes more. There's this really funny thing. I've learned how to screen for it in our interview processes with people, right? And when it comes up, we're like, because this is an IQ test. Well, obviously you should want to make more money yourselves, but no, they're concerned about what other people are making and not what they're making themselves.
TK, you're our resident economist. And the thing that comes to mind right away is I can see option B if it's everyone else in the country makes $25,000, then my purchasing power is twice that of everyone else in the country. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a status thing where everyone in the company, everything else is equal outside of the company.
Yep.
Everyone else is still making what they make outside the company. So it doesn't dramatically change the economics of inflation and everything else. It's just that I want to appear as though I'm doing better than the people around me. And that's really what the heart of Chris's question is. And I love what you said a moment ago about, man, we're filling our houses with things essentially, but not living up to the potential. And the house doesn't live up to the potential. I think way back to our first documentary, Minimalism, from Netflix, which, by the way, is now on YouTube. Y'all can check that out, 100% advertisement free on YouTube. But we had a minimalist architect in there from Tucson, Arizona. And I interviewed him, and he said something that was so fascinating to me, and it's always stuck with me. So whenever I build a home for someone, I don't ask them how many dining rooms they want, how many cars they want to fit in their garage. Do you want a 2.5 car garage? Do you want a dining room? Do you want an entertainment room? I don't ask you those questions because everyone always says yes to those things. Those are the things you're supposed to have. Yes, you need a den and a living room and a family room. If I ask you if you want all three of those, you just say yes to those. He says, I ask one simple question. How do you want to live your life? And then I build a house around how you want to live your life instead of trying to cram your life into someone else's idea of a house. And I'm sure you see that with your clients as well. When they buy the $400 million home or the $40 million home, what happens is now they have to try to fit their life into that space as opposed to building a home around the life that they want to live.
Absolutely. We've seen clients actually, look, again, when as a percentage of income for some people, and we can talk about inequality, that's a separate discussion, but a person sitting here with billions and billions of dollars, for this person, a $40 million home is just like buying a $400,000 home for a normal person. I actually believe that, again, if we're in the system we're in today, it's actually a good thing that they buy that $40 million house, not a bad thing. And again, that's open to debate. But we are seeing people moving away from even the design of real estate in the way that it has been in the past, right? So the Bel Air model, where it's like, I get the big house and I plant Italian cypress and I grow them up really, really tall and I put a gate and a guard and then I sit here in my palace. Many of the younger people that we're seeing, they want a nice place, they want to have an amazing time, but they actually want it to be social. They want it to be communal. They're trying to find out, like, hey, do we buy a condo building so we can all have fun? Like how do we interact? Because we're all connected, right? Going back to the earlier point, right? How do we bring all of ourselves together, even folks who are super successful?
Alabama, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round where we answer your questions from TikTok.
Yes, indeed. You can follow The Minimalists on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and Threads. We are at The Minimalists. Ray Flemings is still with us. You can follow him on social media as well. We'll put links to all of his social media accounts in the show notes over at theminimalists.com/podcast, which, by the way, that's where you can find all of our minimal maxims. Now, during the lightning round, Ray, we each have 60 seconds to answer a question with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response, although TK has never fallen under that.
They usually can't use my reels because it's like 5 minutes long. He's like, ding, 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 ding. And I'm just like dribbling through the legs.
So during the lightning round, we have roughly 60 seconds to answer your question with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We call them minimal maxims. You can find those in the show notes as well. If you're on our email list, every Monday we'll send you our weekly minimal maxims in your inbox. We won't send you spam or junk or advertisements. Theminimalists.email if you want to get on our email list. Today's TikTok question is from Love Sparkles.
Sometimes I wonder how we would feel if everyone in the world only wore black t-shirts. But I do enjoy reading people's shirts and seeing different fashions. Can luxury goods and high fashion be another form of artistic expression?
Ray, I'll let you start on this because I have my own thoughts on art. But an expensive shirt is an artistic expression, or it can be, but it isn't usually. What are your thoughts on this?
140 character or less thoughts, or you want me to expand on that? Just making sure I get the format.
A little bit of both.
Quick, high level. Yes, I think style and fashion and expressing yourself is important. It is hard to do as you get into the brand world. You're not actually necessarily doing what you may think you are. But I think at the end of the day, I don't want to be too judgy about, people's sense of style and whatnot. Let people enjoy themselves. We're not happy enough.
Yeah. TK, what do you have to say?
You can buy money. Not you can buy money, but you can buy art with money, but you have to purchase creativity with your soul. Jazz legend Wynton Marsalis, he has this excellent series on music for children called Why Do Toes Tap? And one of the lessons he teaches is that you can purchase a saxophone, you can buy a trumpet, but you can't money your way into creativity.
Yep.
You want to be good at playing piano, you've got to exercise discipline, work ethic. You got to be willing to learn. And it's the same way with artistic expression. You can purchase luxury goods with money, But you can't money your way into artistic expression. You've got to give up that part of you that wishes to be insulated from vulnerability.
Remember that guy we had in here? We had the director, I think his name's Nick, and Chris from the film Fake Famous. Have you seen this film? It's a great documentary. Sadly. I ran into Nick the other day at the grocery store, but he made this film where he found 3 people and made them famous, got them, millions of followers, and actually made it look as though they were famous. And they started getting attention from other people. They would even get mobbed in some places because people thought they were famous and they wanted to be in proximity to the fame. But Chris's thing is he is a clothes designer and he actually gets a lot of thrift clothes and makes them super stylish. Well, how does he do that? Because his artistic expression is through wardrobe. And what I've learned is that great art doesn't explain itself. It expresses some sort of truth. Mm-hmm. And Mallory, you've got this image here. This is from one of my favorite Instagram accounts. Stefan Vizon is his name. He's this visual artist. And what I love about this, if you're listening to just the audio version of the podcast, you've got this woman here and there's a straw going into her tear ducts. She's crying into a plant. And it's a beautiful piece of art, but he never explains what these art pieces mean. And I'm going to ruin it for you right now because I will say, here's my interpretation of the art. And I could actually posit several different interpretations. Maybe our tears or the things that make us sad, the story that you told earlier, right? Those are the things that make us grow, right? And so maybe it's our sadness that helps us grow. Or maybe another example of what this could be about is, hey, your tears are fuel for someone else. And it makes you cry even more because you are fueling them with your sadness, with your anger, with your vitriol. But he never explains this with the art because great art doesn't explain itself. It sets something out there and says, hey, what do you think about this? And if that's what you're doing with your clothes, it could be a $400 shirt or it could be a $4 shirt. If it's an artistic expression, it's simply an artistic expression.
My tweet would be, you have to understand the difference between fashion and style.
Ooh, tell me about that.
Fashion is whatever the companies say is fashionable right now. It's, what are all the cool kids wearing? What are the influencers saying? Fashion is seasonal, style is timeless. And expressing your own personal sense of style through fashion, I think that's a cool and worthwhile thing. Chasing the latest fashion trend, it's also fun. If you want to do that, have fun, but they're not the same thing.
And what is trendy? Trendy is a fancy word that just means soon to be out of style, right? Because if you're wearing a trend from 7 years ago, it's no longer fashionable, although a stylish person can still make it stylish.
Right, and of course, and what we were discussing earlier, the companies need to sell more stuff. They always need to sell more stuff. If you go get that luxury haircut and you spend an hour in a salon and they do just the perfect cut on your hair and you walked out of that salon and you walk into another one and you say, do I need a haircut? The barber's going to be like, yes, you do. Sit down. Look at they screwed you and they're going to cut you again. The companies are the same way. There is no matter how many clothes you ever buy. The season, the style the trend is going to change immediately. Why? Because you need to buy something else. Because the company has got to make that, that growth for this quarter. And it's going to keep on and keep on. And that's what's powering the discontent. That's what powers the female self-concept issues through social media. Just this, I'm always kind of bombarded by this stuff.
You made an observation. I don't remember where it was, but you talked about how social media, it's amplifying the way in which other people's lives look so superior to ours?
Yeah, this is widely discussed. Social media is a highlight reel, right? I get to choose and post the best moments of my existence. But of course, my existence as a human being, there's a lot of other things that go into it. Yeah. We produce, I think, great events. And the highlight reels look really, really cool. If you did a behind the scenes of what it took to produce that event, the amount of madness that goes on, people don't want to see that.
What I gather from that is that fashion is something that the world tells you have.
Yeah.
But style is something you gotta know for yourself.
It's internal. What looks good on you, how you feel about it, how you carry yourself, and maybe that's on trend, or maybe that's not.
And that social media being the highlight reel, the way I look at it is it's almost like a trailer for your life in a way. And you can have a really bad movie with a great trailer. And then you go to watch the film and you're like, what? Why did I get myself into this? This isn't as awesome. And by the way, you can have an awesome, beautiful, artistic movie that doesn't have the most compelling trailer. And that's okay too. Real quick for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalist. Actually, I've got two things for you. This is our official announcement. We just locked it in last night. Big thanks to Alabama for figuring this out. Sunday Symposium. We do these events. It's an event. The ticket price is really cheap, or if you can't afford a ticket, we do it for free. Here in West Hollywood, we have a new venue here at the Greenway Theater. And we try to just gather a group of 100 to 200 people, and we create this community experience. This next one is December 3rd, since we're releasing this episode the week of Thanksgiving. Get your tickets right now. They always sell out whenever we do these Sunday Symposium events because it's a really small, intimate community experience. And what I love about Sunday Symposium is it creates that community vibe. And now we have this theater, this venue that allows us to create that community vibe. You can congregate with people. The event itself is at noon, but I encourage you to get there at 11 a.m. because we're going to be mingling with you, chatting with you. And also, if you'd like, bring a blanket. We've got a nice lawn there. It's over on Fairfax in West Hollywood, the Greenway Theater. And just bring a blanket, hang out beforehand, get to your seat early. We're going to do a sound bath at the beginning as well. And the tickets are really inexpensive. We're not trying to make any money from this. We're just trying to break even. But it's one of my favorite things that we do. Our whole team with the Minimalists and our local community comes together here. SundaySymposium.com if you'd like to grab your ticket. And one other thing, since this is the week of Thanksgiving, it also means it's the week of Black Friday. The most terrifying shopping day of the year. One of the things we say is this is the day that we trample other people for things we don't need, the day after being thankful for everything that we have. And we just filmed, Danny was in here, Professor Sean, Alabama was in here, and TK and I just filmed this 5-part series called Simple Recipes. And what we're doing is each week releasing a new video on all the social media platforms, so Instagram or TikTok, Facebook, maybe even on X. And we did these 5 videos, one on Black Friday, that's going to come out this week, one on minimalist gift giving. TK did a great one about holiday cards and what the heck am I supposed to do with all these cards? Well, here's a meaningful thing that you can do with them. Also, minimalist gift getting. We have this rule called the minimalist gift getting rule. As a minimalist, you want to ask for better gifts, which is usually shocking to a lot of people. So we did a video about that, and then TK finishes up the series with a beautiful allegory about being home alone during the holidays. A lot of people, especially in cities like Los Angeles, spend the holidays alone, and it's supposed to be the most joyous time of year, but for many people, it can be the most isolating, most alone, most lonely period of the year. And so if you follow us on any of those social media platforms, or if you're on our email list at theminimalists.email, you'll be able to check out those 5 different simple recipes for a more meaningful holiday season. Not a holiday shopping season, but a holiday.
An actual holiday.
Yeah, an actual holiday.
And I like the allegory of the holiday cave. I'm really interested to hear that one.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Well, Alabama, we got a lot more to talk about. But first, what do you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, TK, Ryan, Josh, Alabama, Professor Sean, Danny Unknown, and the rest of the Unstoppable crew. My name is Chelsea, a Patreon friend from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I don't have a question today, but I do have a couple quotes or insights, whatever you would like to call them, about changing your mind and pursuing your dreams. And I'd like to share them in case they can offer any guidance to my fellow minimalist listeners. These are all from a local writer named Chloe Baton, and the first one's called Change. There's nothing you can do about anything. This I know to be true. Yet, you can change everything about something, as long as it's true to you. This next one is a question I like to ask myself when I start to overthink and need to change my mindset and come back to my reality. When experiencing a negative thought, feeling, or reaction, stop and ask yourself, how much of this is reality versus what's only in the mind? Now, when you realize and accept that all reality is created in the mind through your unique perspective of the world and circumstances within it, does any of this change? Is your experience still a negative one? If yes, are you willing to accept the fact that you created it? I have one more to share. It's a little bit more lighthearted and silly, and it's about pursuing your dreams. If there's ever a time to do anything, now's the best time to begin, because the future's too late, not a minute to waste. And the past is the past, can't do shit about that. So right now, you might as well do the thing. I hope you guys enjoyed and are well, and I'll be listening soon. Bye.
All right, y'all. We'll see you on Patreon for the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 419. Ray stuck around the entire time, and we had one of the most meaningful conversations we've ever had on this podcast. And he told this story about the series of events that radically changed his life. Let me tell you this. You think you've gone through something difficult? You probably have. But this was unlike any other story I had ever heard. And I certainly didn't expect it when we first got into this conversation. And it had all kinds of twists and turns. We were laughing, we were tearing up, and I didn't even know where it was going to end. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you over on Patreon, plus much, much more of less. And if you want to hear all that, visit patreon.com/theminimalist or click the link down in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly Maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You'll also gain access to all of our podcast archives all the way back to episode 001. And if you're still on the fence, Patreon is now offering free trials. So if you'd like to test drive our private podcast, you can join for 7 days for free. Big thanks to Ray Flemings for joining us today. You can check out his website. It's called Myria.us. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. And that is our minimal episode for today. If you leave here with just one message, let it be this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.